What is going on, people? Welcome back. We are going to follow up with Gotrik again here and see how he's doing. He's got a bruise from a troll. He's a bit unhappy about bland meals and ugly environments. And he's spending most of his social time hanging out with his goats yet. But he will get there. He did fully heal, and thus far is uninjured. Hopefully he can stay that way. Permanent injuries are going to seriously hamper what's going on around here. I think the ugly environment is coming from the mine he's been working in to make a nice indoor workroom. He's got some meat laying around. He's going to cook it up before it spoils. See if he can keep enough meals on hand. Doesn't make sense to make too many since he has no way to preserve them as yet. He does have a thing for cleanliness, so he spends a fair amount of time keeping the place tidy. He's decided he's going to make a butcher table as well. It feels like an important move. He is short on wood, so bringing down some trees is going to be important for him. He does enjoy his new drum. It is a foul, crude Beastmen drum, but nonetheless, it passes the time nicely. He can bang out a staccato. Some visitors show up, riding on alpaca. They do have some stuff to trade. So he's going to head over and have a convo about that. He has some troll hearts he won't be able to properly preserve, so he's going to give those to him. He could eat them himself to heal, but he's not injured and they don't heal permanent injuries. Took a steel club just to flesh out the money he was getting. He can smelt that for steel later. Also got a lot of stuff to heal. He doesn't tend to focus on what should be most important in terms of hauling, but he gets a lot of stuff brought in regardless. It hopes that he likes to ride around on his goat, whatever reason that would be. Mostly, I guess that's his only friend. Well, he's back to bed. The visitors have had enough, and they end up leaving him a silver, large, crude axe, which is going to be pretty useful when he smelts it. He should get a fair amount of silver out of that. The goats continue to reproduce. He's not overly attached to them at this point, but they are there and should be useful eventually. The ogres show up again, ready to do some trading, while he's chopping some wood out in the rain. The ogres always have a fantastic supply of things, from slaves to magic items, potions, you name it. He really wants to start acquiring stuff from these guys, but he's also pretty short on loot at the moment. He really needs to get to the business of mining that nearby warpstone. That'll dramatically increase his riches. So he tries to focus on finishing his workshop. That's his current main goal. He also, for some reason, likes to stand around in the rain. I did discover that the defect in humanoid alien races that's messing up the size of my dwarf in my dwarf mod here is corrected. So next time those guys roll out, you will see Gotrik slightly change size. And there's the warpstone in question. Sadly, he's got his hands full right now. Well, once he gets his workshop finished, he might make that a priority. It is going to raise his wealth pretty dramatically, and that's going to lead to some potential threats showing up that he is incapable of handling. So he's a little leery about it. In the meantime, though, he's got to refuel his candle. For some reason, he likes to ride the goat around. Oh, he can also refuel the candles in the mining light as well. Keeping everything going is hard work for one person, but he's doing the best he can. He's naming all the baby goats after gold. The latest one was named Auron. The filth that the animals are spreading is starting to get more than a little bit frustrating. He's also decided to make a forge in order to increase his construction ability. He needs to hit that level 8 yet so he can make himself a proper dresser, therefore improve his sleeping comfort level while he sleeps. Some ambrosia nearby. He's waiting for it to be fully grown before harvesting it. There's also more trolls roaming about. He suspects at some point these critters are going to be a major problem for him. He's thinking about some more troll meat. A wild woman wanders in somewhere. He can hear her yelling through the mountain canyons, but he can't see her anywhere and he can't reach her at the moment. It does give him some idea where to start mining when he gets to it, though. He creates his forge, an anvil out of granite and steel. He's got things he can smelt, and he's finally getting close to hitting the next level here in terms of his construction ability. He's going to smooth out that room, make it super nice, and by then he's pretty confident he should be able to make himself a nice dresser. He decides to expand the room that his goats have by putting a big fence up. Currently they're going to start starving. Since they reproduce like mad, he needs to do something if they're going to have enough space to survive. It does open them up to more threats. It's a larger space and the wild animals clearly don't want to stay out of there. And the fence isn't doing much. So at some point he's got to contemplate a proper dwarven wall across there, but that's a major undertaking for one guy. He gets back to smoothing, tries to stay focused on it. Meanwhile, there's a troll lurking around in his goat pen. He did get his fence done, so the goat pen is significantly expanded. Still spends his time banging on his drum. All the concentration he's doing did grant him another magic experience point, which he uses to improve his direct damage spell, which is the most useful spell he's had thus far when it comes to combat. The ambrosia is nearly ready as well. He's looking for some cash for that. He's going to try his best not to indulge too much. Plus it doesn't do him much good to be quasi-stoned when he's got to defend himself. At some point he realizes additional security is going to be in order. His plant skills aren't what he'd like them to be. Another ogre visits. He does have things to trade. This is a solitary ogre. He's wishing he could convince that ogre to join him. Be nice to have an ogre ally, someone to do some proper thumping when foes show up. A goat goes crazy and attacks the ogre. Turns out that happens at the same time. Gotrik's on the way out there to have a discussion. Decides to buy some components off the ogre. Those are going to be very useful at some point, and rather than screw around making his own at that point, having a few on hand to be useful. It does eat up a fair amount of the cash that he has on hand, but it is what it is. He's working with the potatoes and not working with them too well. He should have a good, solid food supply at this point. It's not ideal. He'd like to make something a little more tasty. He's got to deal with what he's got to deal with at this point. Keeps the fire burning, keeps the place clean, keeps the critters butchered before they rot, and he keeps the candles and the fires burning as well. If it isn't the main fire, it's the candles going out in the bedroom. It does give him a good use, though, of all the animal fat he's acquiring, which doesn't last very long before spoiling. Throwing horseshoes, talking to his critters. It's about the only good pastime he's got right now. Some foul chaos Tuskor beast showed up. Seems to be doing its own thing. He's also noticed a mighty Mournfang out there. He's pretty worried about the capacity of that thing. But on the upside, he's figured out how to make himself a dresser. He gets right to the business of that. Likes to stare at that drum and contemplate the music he can play. He does finish the dresser, and he's happy with how it turned out. Not that it's fantastic by any means, but it does improve his bedroom a bit. His meat continues to rot away, and his goats start getting taken out by the Mournfang. There's not a lot he can do about that, because to anger that Mournfang could potentially be the end of his life, so he's just got to deal with it. There's a lot of hazardous critters around. The Tuskor ends up killing one of his goats as well, and that guy he feels like he can deal with, especially with his new magic. So he gets out there and starts giving it the business. The magic renews relatively quick, so rather than charging straight into battle, he's decided to give it a few shots. He almost shoots his goat inadvertently. He's doing a fair bit of damage to the Tuskor. He decides to jump in. Something about swinging that pickaxe at critters that really makes him happy. Not just critters. So he brings his deceased goat in. He knows if he butchers the Tuskor, he's going to get nothing but chaos meat. He would get some additional animal fat. It's at this point that he can reuse his spell to improve his weaponry one more time. So he casts it again, bringing his weapon to a proper skill, proper quality level of excellent. Some mad rats show up. are actually plagued swarm rats, and he really doesn't want anything to do with them. He decides he's going to work inside for a few days. Now on the downside, he doesn't have a way to access his food, so he decides to mine a tunnel right behind his bed. Meanwhile, the rats are going bananas and won't leave him alone. More trolls show up as well. Feels like he's never going to get a break from all the wildlife. There's also a chaos warhound milling about, and that he knows he could deal with. He's too afraid to go out there with the rats. One good bite from them is going to lead to an infection. It's not going to be good for him. Plus he knows they won't hang out for too long before buggering off of their own accord. He did build a granite door behind his bed, so he now has access to his supply room. It's not long before blight strikes. His plants start being infested with a blight disease, and he's going to have to deal with it, which means he's going to have to deal with the rats. He really doesn't want to go out there, but he doesn't have much choice at this point. And he gets word of someone named Gubia who really needs rescue nearby. One of the rats swarms him, gets a hold of him before he can magic it, gives him a good bite. The other one he takes care of without a problem. It's a little bruised up from it. Doesn't seem to be anything serious though. He's going to have to leave Gubia to her own devices at this point. He can't save the world yet. Plus he hasn't acquired any gold. That being his whole goal in life at this point. He really needs to get busy on that. He does get the blight dealt with. Even as he's working on it, it's constantly spreading. Despite it being 1 a.m., he's got it all cleared up. He's also fully healed from the rat attack. There are some dead, rotting rats right in front of his door, but he's got other priorities like keeping the food coming in. He also needs additional wood if he's going to keep all the fires burning. He wants to build a wall where he had to build the tunnel to properly close off his bedroom from the storage room. He feels like it's a bit of a security risk. Chaos Warhound at that point starts hunting one of the baby goats, gets a hold of it, and he does his best to rush out there in time to save the goat. However, he's not sure he's going to make it. He shoots the Warhound with the magic arrow, but it doesn't take long after that. Macy goes down to it. He rushes out with his pickaxe, starts giving it the business. Sadly, the foul beast of chaos bites off one of his toes. Turns out he needs to get some armored shoes. Hauls his dead goat in, leaves the Chaos Warhound to suffer in the dirt, as only seems fitting for a foul beast of chaos. He's got to get himself fixed up before infection sets in. Also, before he bleeds to death from his missing toe. So he tends that up, gets back to the business of looking after the goats. There's a lot of predatory animals milling around. He knows he's going to lose more. He's already lost a toe trying to protect these things. He's finished all the floor smoothing in his new workroom. Decides to do some smelting. Grabs a hold of that crude Beastman axe that's made out of silver. Smelts that baby down for 250 silver. If only it was gold, he thinks, as he continues smoothing the walls. He's cleaned up some of the junk sitting around. He's moved things into his new workroom. And it's about then some lady shows up with a knife, trying to get a hold of him. He's not too pleased with that, but he's going to have to deal with it. He's deciding that there's a few stone pillars right outside his home area. He's going to have to mine those out. They're constantly in the way. But at this point, his attacker seems to be milling about. He yells at her, says, "Hey, I don't have a problem with you." She yells back, "You're gonna die." He tries to turn her into a golden statue with his most powerful spell. Does not turn her into gold, but it does injure her significantly. From there, he's able to gather her materials. She left some food, and that knife she left can be smelted as well. He's also realized while he's out and about that the ambrosia is ready for harvest again. He'll have a good supply of that should someone else show up wanting to trade. He has to do some meditation to get some magic back. And it's not long after that that another ogre tribe shows up, ready to do some trading. Once again, they have a phenomenal offering in terms of what they're selling. Not just the slaves, the magic items especially. Sadly, he just doesn't have any money. He doesn't take anything off him. He's realizing his priorities are going to have to change if he's going to get anywhere here. He's having a good time at his campfire. And he decides he better go pick up all the ambrosia before one of the ogres, one of the trolls, eats it all. The ogres are doing their thing. He's decided to build some shelves. He thinks that'll be a pretty useful thing to have about. He can put some of his supplies on it and clean up his storage room a bit. Some of the animal fat he's been storing rots away. And another one of his goats gets attacked and killed by the Mournfang. There's nothing he can do about it. The beast is simply too powerful. His most powerful spell won't really have much effect on it. And his other spell that does direct damage won't do enough damage to make it worthwhile unless he gets very lucky. So outside of attacking it and hiding inside, he feels like he doesn't have many options. There is a mad alpaca that shows up at that point. He's got quite the range with his new spell since he's improved it. And he's going to wait the thing out. It bashes down his fence, comes charging at him. He knows his spell's not going to be ready in time. He has to back up. He's able to get the spell off again before he charges in. The alpaca's pretty gung-ho, but it doesn't end up doing any damage to him before he brings it down with his pickaxe. He finally makes it a point to get the mining done on the stone pillars that have always been in his way here. Tribesperson shows up with a bow at that point, hell-bent on taking him out, taking over the small little place he's built for himself. By the time he gets outside from his smoothing job, the guy's all gung-ho. He hits him with an arrow, a magical arrow, and then Gotrik gets hit back in return. Decides he's going to go at him with the pickaxe, since he does love a good punch-him-up fight. Guy left him a bow and a little bit of medicine, which is fortunate since he also injured him. He's not happy about seeing the dead guy laying there. He's got to get himself tended up. His right leg took some damage from that. He's got a cracked bone. It's going to slow him down quite a bit, but fortunately he's got his goat he can ride around on. Heads out again to do some repair on the fence from where the mad alpaca started beating on it. He realizes he's definitely going to need some kind of walls outside if he's going to keep all these critters at bay. But it's at that point that he finally finishes all the smoothing. So he's happy about that. His workshop is pretty fantastic at this point. He does have a goat to butcher. He's moved his eating table into his workshop. He's still cooking outside. He realizes he's going to have to sit down and do some research and figure out how to build somewhere he can do some cooking on. But a heat wave has struck, so he also realizes there's a good chance he could die from heat stroke. Fortunately, under the mountain, it stays relatively cool, but he doesn't want to risk it. He's got some more magic experience from all the work he's been doing and all the focus, especially the research requires, so he improves his spell one more time, the direct damage spell being the one he shoots off the most, so that's the one he went for. He could improve his final transmutation spell, have a better chance of turning someone to gold, but it's at that point that another massive jabberslice shows up. It's also at that point he's ready to almost completely write the goats off. The more he researches, the more magic experience he gains, simply from focusing. He decides he'd better do some butchering before his goat rots. He's also had to bring in some more wood here, since he's all out and his campfire's gone out. A magical delivery arrives in the form of a bunch of smoke leaf. And he decides he can definitely do something with that. He can also use it for steel, since it showed up in magical pods that apparently produce steel when they break down. Otherwise, he's doing all right. He's having a good time. He's still alive. Minus the missing toe, he's still healthy. I appreciate you guys being with me today. I appreciate all the support and the comments and the likes. You guys are fantastic. I do love you all, and I'll see you next time.